Hello, everyone. We're just going to let all of our registrants kind of pop in here for a little bit, and then we will dive right into our webinar. So let me just give you guys a minute or so to get into the webinar. Okay, well, it looks like the attendees are slowing down or very slowly joining into the webinar. My name is Karen Wills. I'm Senior Vice President of Marketing and Investor Relations here at Strategicon. And would like to welcome everyone to our webinar, Industry Perspectives on Change Orders. So something near and dear to everyone's hearts. Well, maybe not near and dear, but it's all on our minds. Before I turn it over to our panel, I just have a couple of housekeeping items, and then I will get out of your hair. If you have any questions, there should be and there is a questions tab on your control panel for GoToWebinar. So please type the questions in there. I will be monitoring them throughout the session and provide them to the panels, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. And also, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. Please keep your eyes out for our next Straight Talk. Strategicon has created a Straight Talk series, which is where we interview an industry expert on a specific topic. And coming up in November, we will be speaking with Lee Koos of Pharrell Consulting on issues of that biotechs have in their outsourcing, and it may get more focused than that. But please keep your eyes out for that invitation. The date's not yet confirmed, but I guarantee you, as soon as I know, you will know. So, and with that, let me hand it over to my CEO and the moderator of this panel, Anka. We have so many panelists. Anka Kopescu. Yes, I apologize for getting your name right. So, Anka, over to you.
Okay, so I would think that you should know my name by now, but hello, yeah, everyone. Thrilled to be moderating today's panel on a very important topic for our industry, and quite honestly, not much talked about, change orders management. I've been in the industry for more than 15 years, both sides of the aisle. I have personally experienced the pain points associated with change order management, pain points which we hope to solve with our innovative solution, Clinical Maestro. So let's get started by introducing our panelists. Jeanne, I'm going to start with you. It's same question for everyone. Please introduce yourself and tell us why you are interested in this topic or why this topic is relevant to you. Up to you, Jeanne.
Thank you, Anka. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jeanne Trevor, and I work for Astellas Pharma based in the U.S. I've been at this company for about 9 years, and I'm the director and global category lead for clinical outsourcing that covers the range of services used within the clinical trials. And today I'm here is because I really want to, join the conversation that really affects every pharma company and every supplier that's supporting clinical services about change orders and what are some of the root causes and what are ways that we can, potentially mitigate some of them.
Thank you so much, Jeanne. Jeanne, on to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jeanne Hecht, and I have been in the industry almost 30 years. I currently serve as the CEO of JTH Consulting. I am a board member for 6 companies across the life sciences and pharmaceutical services space, both privately held, venture-backed, as well as publicly traded organizations. In my various career throughout the industry, where I spent time in the CRO, I've been on the commercial side. I was CEO of an ophthalmology development firm, COO of a medical imaging company. I've spent a lot of time working on that side, on the services side, understanding the challenges that come with things called revenue leakage, which is often due to issues at the initial stages of budgeting and bidding, and that necessitate the need for change orders. So I'm looking forward to this conversation with the other wonderful women on this panel and answering any questions that come from the audience.
Wonderful. Anna, on to you.
Thank you. My name is Anna Panova. I work for Insight Corporation, which is headquartered at the border between Pennsylvania and Delaware in the US. I completed my PhD in biotechnology and worked at science and innovation-driven companies as principal investigator in the beginning, business developer, and for the last over decade in strategic sourcing. I'm also Six Sigma certified and led dozens of improvement projects. So it's very dear to my heart, this change order improvement project, right, or initiative. So to finish on my bio, I joined Insight in 2020 as R&D sourcing director, and my team's core objective is to support Insight clinical trials with cost negotiation, contracting with CROs as well as ancillary service providers. And by the way, a brief intro to Insight. It's about 2,500 employees company, small pharma, with rare oncology diseases and dermatology drugs, and we have this fast-paced, strong innovation spirit, which surely ends up with good pipeline, lots of trials, and numerous change orders. So looking forward to discussing.
Okay, so wonderful panel today, provocative panelists as well, since I know you all personally. Let's talk a little bit about the change order process in general. We can talk about, I mean, there's so many things we can talk about, but are you using out of scope trackers from the CRO perspective? Does that make the CRO's life easier? Let's say fixed cost templates easier than variable cost templates? Does having a strategic partnership help? You know, how many change orders do you experience? You said innumerable. So any angle you want to take on the overall change order experience. And Jeanne, I'm going to start with you because the CROs rarely get the microphone first when it comes to change orders. You usually get a lot of the blame. But how does the process look like kind of under the hood on the CRO side?
And I think every company manages it with threads of similarity and threads of differences. And many times organizations are, working with their sponsor customers at a really fast pace to start up, execute, deliver on a clinical trial. And we all know that the initial bidding process is quite fractured and flawed in many areas. And that often sets us up for change order and the necessitation of change orders throughout the life of the project. What I considered a flawed process, there's the change notification forms, out of scope trackers. I look at those a little bit like I look at calorie counters, right? Unless you're entering the calories at the time that you consume them, and you're going to forget something, right? So at the end of the day, if you're trying to log all of your meals and think back to everything you ate, you're probably going to forget something. Now, if you try to do that on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, it's going to get even worse, right? And so when I think about CNF's change notification forms or out of scope trackers, I think that those all carry that same level of flaw. That people, it's not a routine process to think every single day and to talk to the 100 people that are working on a clinical trial and say, did you do something today that was not in this contractual document that we signed 6 months ago? So as a result, what usually happens and when the change notification or the change orders are identified is when companies, so finance organizations, boards, start to look at gross margin, net margin, EBITDA, and we start to look at it at the project level and we say, wow, we estimated this level of margin for this project and we're falling short. So the project team comes in, we ask them to present why, and they say, well, we're doing all of this stuff that's out of scope. Some companies catch that in a monthly project review at the management level, other times it bubbles up to a board. And when it does, then we say, go back and talk to the customer. And then those individuals then go back and they try to recreate everything that was out of scope. And then there leads to a challenge with transparency, because sometimes the customer on the other side might have turned over. Sometimes the project manager on the CRO side turned over and they're trying to recreate what Bill or Sue did. And so as a result, there is an issue. It is a process that is fraught with issues. So long story short, when I think about those and I think about fixed price versus variable price contracts, there's very few true fixed price. It's fixed price for fixed scope. So then the question is, did the scope change? And then you're back to the exact same process looking through it. So I think overall, the entire process needs an overhaul, and that I know we'll talk throughout today about some of the possible solutions to the issues that currently plague this part of the process.
Okay, very interesting perspective and rarely heard, Jeanne. Thank you so much for it. And sometimes as sponsors, you really get blinded into a blame game, and we don't consider the timing factor, which is so important, which you highlighted today. I'm going to turn to you, Jeanne, a little bit to maybe discuss more the angle of having strategic partners. Does it make the change order easier? Because supposedly you negotiated everything on earth, the effort, the rate cards. Do you still get surprised? Or again, we're talking for a general process perspective. And of course, you can talk about any other angle you want.
No, thank you so much, and and thank you, Jeanne, for your perspective as well, because I echo a lot of what you said and what you see is that fundamentally when we start the process for a study, we haven't done feasibility, we don't know ultimately truly what the enrollment rate's going to be. So fundamentally, the process is built to have change. Period. Right. So given that, as Anka mentioned, the difference that I've seen going from what we would call previously like tactical sourcing versus strategic suppliers, that there has been a net improvement in terms of some of the pain points around the change order process, where we did our best to try to have language within our agreements to say, hey, you own this, you call the shot. We have all sorts of process maps about in general, like what's the default for running these studies. So we tried to control as much as we could to say, like, everybody knows that these are the SOPs, these are the processes you follow. So this is what we agree on in terms of average weights, etc. But even with our best efforts, there's still change, right? There's still change because anytime the protocol changes, we have a lot of oncology studies that's going to open up, a can of worms of trying to pull back, right? Some of this, excess or scope leakage, as you might mention. So it's, even, as much as I've tried, even with fixed effort or fixed rates, just this morning, I was really proud that we had just landed, some fixed rates. It's something that took a long time to negotiate, like over 6 months. And then operation team says, oh, we're making operational change. We're pulling away some of that scope that was part of like a deliverable. So, there goes the fixed rate.
Well, and then of course, the blending is a whole different issue because you can negotiate every single resource individually, but you can't always negotiate the effort or the location of the person working on the study, or the specific blend, the percentage of effort for a particular task, which is normal because clinical trials, as we all know, are non-trivial, quite a high degree of complexity. What are you seeing, Anna, on your end? I know you worked with hybrid templates, some variable units, some fixed units. Does the process work? Are you happy with it?
Yeah, so, and thank you, by the way, I really appreciate it starting with Jeanne here with CRO perspective in terms of, for example, out of scope tracker. What did we do today, which is not in scope? It's kind of funny, but yeah, thank you I appreciate your reality now better. And thank you, Jeanne, for your slides, kind of your views. So I guess I can add a little bit of kind of thoughts, just numbers, a bit of numbers. Like, for example, in our CRO cost model, which we have, we try not to negotiate any fixed like milestone things. Instead, we have about 1/3 of the model basically with fixed unit costs, and so they're impacted by number of units, but that's it. We don't negotiate the cost of the unit. And approximately 2/3 of our cost model, I would say our costs rather, are depending on variable unit costs, like project management. If the study increased in amount of patients, then variable unit cost, basically unit cost for that unit is changed as well for the project management unit. And then we multiply by amount of months. But so this is pretty flexible approach. We like it. What we don't like is absence of automation and Excel. That's why we came to Clinical Maestro. But a couple of thoughts about overall volume, each CRO change order, and we, as I looked at last year's statistics, we processed about 1 change order per 1 trial we run. So 1 change order for CRO, which is typically caused by protocol amendment, right? Or in some probably quarter cases, underperforming enrollment for this study. The 1 change order is translates to 3 ancillary change orders approximately, at least. Central lab, IRT, and investigator grants. It's because for all of them, CROs and these 3 ancillaries, the budget is driven by number of patients, number of sites, but number of countries, which are pretty much affected by each change order in CRO. So basically, effect of this upstream, I would say, imperfections ends up in huge organizational burden in processing this, right? Like, oh, how this change impacts the price, how that impacts the budget. So my team is very much interested in decreasing all avoidable change orders.
You know, one big challenge is, of course, when the CRO manages quote unquote pass-through costs, and it takes a long time to negotiate with the CRO, and you may be negotiating, let's say, in parallel with the central lab, and then the assumptions might deviate a little bit between negotiations, or even putting everything at the same level. It's quite a challenge. Let's bring the audience in. Karen, can you bring in the first poll? Let's see. Okay, here you go. Karen, I let you manage this, or shall I read it?
No, go. You can go ahead and read it and add some color to it.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that all attendees should be voting on this one. A little bit later, we'll divide it into sponsors and service providers, but everyone should vote on this one.
Okay, so what we are trying to take the temperature on how long does it take to run a change order. So to manage a change order, and we stopped at 100 hours, which I think it's underestimating the overall effort. But audience, please vote, and let's see where we land. Karen, you are probably seeing this on your end.
Yep, I got it. Where the vote's going up. You guys got a few more seconds. Make your decision. All right, we'll count it down. Okay, it looks like it's pretty stable now. Let me just share. Can you guys see the polling results?
Okay. Yes, we see. And of course, this is coming both from CROs and from sponsors. So panelists, any reactions to this?
This is Anna. I guess I can mention one thing, that recently we estimated these hours. And first of all, it was a huge surprise for me how many hours CRO spends on it. Because you guys are, that's Jeanne's part, you guys are starting to understand how much it costs, basically, this or that change. At least in our setup, this is where it starts. And CRO, when I questioned them, all the layers of their organization involved, then what I understood is they spend only CRO about 150 hours on large change orders, significant, and probably 120 on smaller ones. So it seems to be, unless it's awfully inflated, it seems to be very, very large effort. Yeah.
No, because when you think about it, if there's 4 people each working 20 hours, that's 80 hours right there, right, on a change order.
That's right.
And so when you think about the fact that the people that are working on the change order, you know, typically, as I said, it starts with either a project review or something that identifies the project as below target from a margin, or perhaps the project manager just identifies it because a very easy to identify request has come in. For example, I don't know, we need to add 1 more country and 10 sites, right? But then you have to think of all the different people that have to be involved from a CRO perspective, and the larger the CRO, the more people that is. And that's the reason why, to me, these numbers aren't surprising at all. And so it goes through an initial discussion, then it goes through the team that is not that same team, that are putting the bid together. Then it goes back to review. Then it probably goes up to senior management to review. Then it goes back if there's any edits or adjustments through that loop. And then it gets submitted to the sponsor. And then the sponsor comes back with questions that then restarts that entire process.
So think about it for a second. If you take, let's say, 100 hours on the CRO and 100 hours on the sponsor, maybe that's too much, let's say 150 hours in total, that's costing the industry easily $30,000 per change order just in sheer labor.
Yep.
And when we are talking about innumerable number of change orders, we are talking about pretty significant effort out there. That I think leaves some food for thought in terms of the cost to the industry in processing change orders. Karen, can you take away the panel? The poll. So let's continue on this topic. And I would like to focus on the 3 biggest pain points. I know all of you could talk for hours about this topic, but let's narrow it down to the top 3. Jeanne, I'm going to start with you. From your perspective.
Right. Yeah. Anka, you hit it on the head. You know, in terms of my top 3, that's hard for my top 100. You know, so fundamentally, I'm here to drive a value for Astellas and make sure that we get trials delivered at the right quality, time, and cost. So ultimately, having access to our data, and really being able to roll up metrics to understand where are the trends, where is the leakage occurring, because having that ability to really understand your portfolio and your trials and what are driving some of these changes, I think can help us make better decisions at the outset, right? Whether it's the number of units for a particular task, of like how many protocol amendments we have. We did an analysis of this a couple of years ago just to look and see, just like, are we underfunding like the original work order, to make sure if our oncology trial, if we have on average 3 or 4 amendments, substantial amendments, and even more non-substantial, why aren't we putting some of those costs or even contemplating those? So I think that's number 1. 2 is really just around internal processes at Astellas, moving paper or emails, that is emails and Excels now that we're in the remote environment. And 3, just the inefficiency of all of it. I think that these are, kind of where we land.
And Jeanne, you brought in a very important point, which is metrics and analytics, which we all know that due to the sheer manner in which the change orders are processed with Excel spreadsheets with multiple tabs and comments and colors, it makes it very difficult to go and trend it over time and really understand, where there is room for better negotiation up front. Jeanne, how does it look on the CRO side? Because this is mission critical. The ability to predict effort. And we all know the costing tools are flawed in that regard as well. And that, again, it spills over into the change orders. So again, tell us a bit of perspective as an insider.
So I'll say first, if you have employees and you have more than one customer, you're going to have problems, right? And it's going to be a flawed process, because when you have more than one customer and you're working across 10, 15, 20, 100 different accounts, every single one of those customers wants the process differently. And then when you have employees and they have various skill levels across the globe, you get the same problem, right? So it just amplifies it. And a guy I work with says that all the time, and I think you can use that in almost any example. So what do I think are kind of the 3 challenges? 1 is archaic tools and outdated processes. Number 2 is too many people in the process, right? So you have to go to so many different people, so many different systems to try to get answers to be able to then take that into the change order process as an input. That's a challenge. The other thing is I think it goes to the fact that there's just people involved in the process. And so we've got folks who have different levels of business acumen, folks who come on and off projects at different times. So there's a lot of trying to understand the history of what happened and why it happened that way. And then that then leads to challenges if there's any kind of turnover at the sponsor side or the CRO side, that amplifies everything. So those would be kind of my 3 big areas.
And these are very important points, especially with the record high turnover in the industry that we are all experiencing, both on pharma and the CRO side. So playing detective or looking for the needle in the haystack, it's not an easy job. Anna, what are your pain points? Your top 3?
Yeah, I guess I can offer a kind of holistic view of this here, and pretty much main points were touched upon. I think I just want to mention 3 pillars, I guess. So our protocols are written by people, as we mentioned. So people are imperfect, bright, talented, but still, as I understand, dialing all the experience a bit manually, right, into protocol without necessarily sophisticated algorithms on how to achieve desired result with the absolute minimal amount of precise amount of patients, exclusion criteria, and so on. So we arrive at imperfect protocol. So it's basically item number 1. Then we bring it to real market, and oops, we don't have a crystal ball to understand that intricacies of the sites we work with, potential patients. So we need to go through substantial trial and error when working with actual market conditions, like sites and patients. And in Lean Six Sigma, it's called rework, which we need to do, like trial and error, which ends up in waste. But this is how we go through figuring out how this protocol is implemented in the real market. And then when change is needed, our budgets in response to protocol design and its cost drivers, well, it's kind of manual, as we discussed, in amount of hours, right? So budget calculations, recalculations, cost approvals are very time consuming. So there are 3 basically protocol imperfections, three pillars, a crystal ball, absence of it to understand the patients and sites better. And the 3rd is response, budget response to all these changes.
That's great. So let's ask the audience, Karen, if you can bring a poll. We have 2 polls trying to assess the pain points from our audience. So this one, please, it's only sponsors vote on this one. And the question is, what are the biggest pain points from your perspective? And I capture some of the pillars here: the lack of visibility into cost drivers, and I guess that is not having the crystal ball or not having enough information, general manual process, lack of technology, as Jeanne called it, archaic tools, the sheer labor effort in performing the analysis, maybe even understanding the relationship to these out of scope trackers and managing communication, comments, emails, trackers. So not all of the pillars we discussed, but go ahead and vote. Karen, how are we doing on the voting?
We're doing pretty well. It looks like while you were talking, everybody jumped in and voted. So
we should have had some more options, but I think we were limited to 5 choices.
We were, yeah. So we realized there are others, but yeah, it's going up a little bit. I'll just give it another few seconds.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last chance. Going once, going twice. Okay, guys, here's the. Give me a second, and I will. Oops, they're still voting in. All right, now it looks pretty. So hold on, I will show you the results.
Interesting. Okay, so panelists. This is Jeanne. Let me go to you first. So these are the sponsors voting. Looks like they understand the CNFs pretty well, but they don't have enough visibility into the cost drivers. Why is that, you think?
I think it comes to my point earlier. You know, I really appreciate what Jeanne and Anna were saying as it relates to that. They've worked hard to try to define units that are fixed price for that unit, right? So maybe it's the cost of a monitoring visit, or the cost of a table or a listing or a figure. I think some companies may not be at that stage. And so when a CRO provides updated estimates based on a change order, it might not get to that point where it's a fixed scope for fixed unit for fixed price, and that's probably driving some of it. The other could be the fact that the sponsor's not aware of all of the different activities that take to deliver that unit, and they don't know the different resources involved. And so as a result, they think that that leads to a lack of transparency in the cost drivers. That would be my initial gut.
And I know from our experience in Clinical Maestro and working with different sponsors, that sponsors often do not provide enough visibility themselves into what the cost drivers might be. Then this is trickled down into the CROs not necessarily providing that information as part of the RFP. And then certain cost drivers that were not called out then become change drivers in the change orders, and that can cause some of the friction. But Anna, what is your perspective?
Yeah, actually, I see that first and second items here, they're kind of connected in the sense that if there is non-manual and easy process to make it transparent, the cost drivers involved and basically impact of this or that change on the cost drivers and on the assumption and total cost, it will be basically miraculously useful. And from my perspective, actually, I'm surprised not many people mentioned managing communication. I guess in preparation of the budget itself, there's lots of analysis versus communication, but overall, it's basically communication and improvement opportunities. I see it as very, because it's like it was mentioned, too many people, well, many people on trials across any groups within one organization and across organizations, right? So to my experience, basically information gets lost at interfaces, and it makes us not as efficient together in figuring out something, how to improve something, how to make it more efficient. So yes, it's manual, yes, it's not clearly visible sometimes what's happening, but also we are cut off opportunities to see it holistically because of borders between all of us, organizations as well.
Jeanne, what do you think? And I know managing communication is a challenge, actually. I'm also surprised it's a low number. Give us your thoughts.
It is, but it wasn't. Thank you so much. You know, it probably isn't the biggest pain point. And I can say that what changed for us a few years ago is that, you know, we had our budget grid, but then a few years ago, we also mapped the CRO's budget grid to ours and made it a requirement to see that. And I think that was a game changer for us to be able to reduce the amount of CRO effort with constantly having to put a note in the margins of, you know, why. It was always like this manual why. And then when they started including their budget grid along with ours, we could actually see, you know, what some of those unit and those cost drivers were. So I think that really helped us, you know, with that piece, which made some of our pain points become now managing communication, email,